Hi everybody and welcome to Open Source Tonight. Today folks, what we're going to be talking about is Docker Compose. The first thing you need to do is go to the Docker website, and we're going to assume you're running Debian today, and you need to copy in, or something based on Debian, you're going to copy in these commands into your terminal, run all of these commands, and then once it's done, you're going to have Docker installed on your system, which is very important. You need to have Docker installed, okay? Obviously. Then, after we get Docker installed, we're going to be able to use Compose. But I do just want to explain what Docker Compose does and what a container is, because these are relevant concepts that you need to understand to be able to fully grasp the beauty of Docker. So a container, Docker deals with containers. And what is a container? A container is where we take the operating system, all the dependencies the program needs, and we put them into a little box effectively. You can think of it like a virtual machine, but the advantage is it's lighter weight. And so that's the real big advantage. So they're a lot more portable, they're smaller, they are lower RAM and CPU footprint and things like that, because you're not doing everything to the same level as a VM. And they are a little bit less locked down than a VM, but realistically, they're pretty close, from what I understand anyway. So normally you put one thing in a Docker container, one service. What if you have an application that needs MySQL, a web server, and maybe like some third service? Well, Docker Compose would let us have a configuration file that says, I want these three services to start all together and link up. And then they can pull them down. These three containers, I can pull them up and I can pull them down automatically. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's take a look at that. So we're going to create a folder for our Pacific Docker Compose setup here. And we're going to have a couple different services running here. This is just a demo. You could obviously change that. But what the beauty of it is that with the Docker Compose, we can have all this start automatically. So most projects has got a template, so we're going to use a template here from the project that we're using today. And if you take a look at the template and then we paste that, okay, you're going to just make it to a compose.yaml file, or you can do docker-compose.yaml. Either one works. I personally mainly use compose.yaml, YML, but you could use docker- if you prefer as well. So whichever one you use, you're going to pick that, and then you're going to save the template inside of it. And this is going to be, like I said, in that folder we talked about. Then on top of that, usually with most applications, we're going to need at least one Docker volume. So what a Docker volume is, this is another concept to understand. It is effectively a way we can map something on the host system where the container is going to run on top of, our actual hardware server, for example, to inside the container. So for example, let's say that you had a media server. You could map a folder in your system, your local system, into the system of the container. And with a lot of these containers, there's like a specific place you're going to map effectively your internal system into the container. That's where it's going to be looking for. So your internal system can be anywhere you want, as long as you got file permissions, but the container, it has to be in a very specific path inside the container. So if we look at this compose file, you can see down here where it says volumes, we can actually use that to our advantage to do exactly what we need. We're going to be able to map, for example, like a configuration directory that stores config data into this place, or media, or whatever we need. The advantage is that this allows us to keep everything the same between each start of the container. This is important because a container normally starts up fresh, and if we didn't do something like this, we would be starting from scratch every time. You don't want that. So now that we've got all this set up with a very simple compose file, again, for a lot of projects, you can just copy this in and then save it. So we'll do that with Nano. Now that we're out of Nano, what I'm going to tell you to do, and this is very interesting, or very important, I should say, what you should do now is you should go and do a make directory on the directories it was referencing, right? And by doing that, we're good. At this point, we can go ahead and start the compose system. So what we're going to do is we're going to do in our terminal docker space compose space up and hit enter. And you're going to see a bunch of text fly by. And after a few seconds, let's say that in our case it's a web service, we can now pull that up on our computer, and you can see that the web service is sitting there running quite happily. And then to exit out of it, we can just simply do Control-C to exit out. But another thing we can do is we can daemonize everything so that we can put it in the background. So we can do docker space compose space up and then space -d, lowercase d. Hit enter, and there you go. You're going to be in the background. Now, to bring it down in that scenario where you put it in the background, for example, you can do Docker space compose space down. Okay. And when you hit enter on that, it's going to bring it down. So these are the most fundamental components of Docker Compose. There is ways to automatically build images, which are the fundamental component that then becomes a container. But this is just trying to get you interested and Compose and just see the power. I mean, we can run all these things and have them linked together so easy with the file system and all this, and it's in a simple config file. YAML is not exactly the best format for writing a configuration file in my book, but it does work. Well, everybody, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Leave your questions or comments about Docker Compose in the comments. I would be curious to see how many of you use Docker Compose. My guess is that probably if this video gets a lot of audience, probably a decent amount of you have used it at least once. It's a pretty big deal these days, from what I gather. Anyway, everybody, hope you enjoyed today's program, and I'll see you all again very soon. Goodbye, everybody.
And action.